All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new unit, Middle Ages. So we just finished up with the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of the Roman Republic, and just kind of the overall collapse of Rome and how that happened. Now we're going to take it to the next step. We're going to see what happened after Rome fell. And I think this map is a pretty good sum of what did go wrong with Rome. You see a lot of movements of different tribes. These tribes are partially the reason that Rome fell. They stretched themselves too thin and allowed for these tribes to come in. And we're not just talking European tribes. If you look over here on the right side by my mouse, you see the Huns. These people came over from Asia, kind of Western Asia. So there's a whole lot of movement of people. And eventually this movement of people does form the Middle Ages and what happens next. We're going to take an investigation of that. All right, so Europe regresses as a result of the collapse of the Roman Empire. So you should, at this point, have your note packet ready to go, your online notes. This is what you should be looking at. So I need you to include impacts in this box below. And as I go along in this lecture, I encourage you to fill this out. You may have to go back or pause the video for some of these questions like this. Think these questions over and come up with your own answers. But a lot of the information that I'm talking about is going to be able to fill in these boxes today. Okay? All right, so first, invasions break down trade and destroying many businesses. So a lot of the same trade routes that have been built up during the Roman Empire to bring in goods from all over, so merchants can make money and make a living, were the same routes, the same routes that a lot of these warriors were traveling on to get to Rome. So it's hard to trade when there's constantly barbarians and warriors there to try to take what you have or move into the city and sack the city. So some cities decline due to a lack of resources. Think about that word decline. What does it mean when a city declines? What are we losing? Something to think about. And it's going to be important moving forward. A lot of the resources were destroyed in the fall of the Roman Empire. A lot of the ways that resources traveled around, like we talked about with the trade routes before, were now destroyed. So people couldn't get the things they needed, which meant that a lot of people end up moving to the countryside. If you were a blacksmith and your shop gets destroyed, it's hard to just build a new shop from the ground up, especially when there's barbarians constantly destroying the city, constantly messing with trade routes, so on and so forth. So a lot of people take to the countryside and become farmers. So I want you to think about how Rome had built themselves up. There was a little 5-minute video at the beginning of the fall of the Roman Empire where you look at how the Roman Empire is using trade and politics to become this big, massive, expansive beast of an empire. And now it's starting to regress. It's almost like they're going back in time. And then education declines due to the lack of stability and money. So people don't have businesses. People are moving to the country. No one can get resources. And now we don't have education at the time, and there's just no stability. It's hard to send the kids to school if the village is on fire. So then here come the Franks. This is really the first major unification of these barbarians in Europe. And the Franks lasted from about the 500s to the 800s AD. The Franks were a Germanic people, so the root of Germanic is German. They came from modern-day Germany, and they ruled a lot of Western Europe, as you can see to the map to the right. And you can see here, it's really, really small, but if you look in on that, it talks about different conquests. So they advance their territory through, whether it be through battle, sometimes through diplomacy, but they're spreading out. And a big thing here is this group of people convert to Christianity. So they start taking on a lot of the Christian ideas, the Christian thoughts. The Christian way of life becomes really, really important for the Franks. And the person that brought them all together is Charlemagne. And so he rules from 771 to 814. And Charlemagne was kind of a rare figure back then. A lot of people were tiny. Charlemagne was 6'3", and he had a very, very nice beard like the picture shows. All right? Now, if you look at this picture, take time to investigate. Again, we talked about converting to Christianity. You can see the cross here at the top of this And then we can see kind of the way they decorate it. Maybe these are crosses up here too. Just the becoming a Christian king. He was a powerful man, and you'll watch the video that's going to be linked up. It's also right here in the PowerPoint if you need to click on that. Let's learn a little bit here. So he creates the greatest empire since the Romans. So everything falls apart, and Charlemagne picks the pieces back up and puts it together. And he puts it back together through good diplomacy, through valuing education, through valuing trade. He starts to bring stability back into Europe, and a lot of people appreciate him for it. So again, he uses other people and creates groups of strength and stability. A lot of times in Rome, we saw emperors that were corrupt, emperors that used their power for bad. Charlemagne was different. He started to restore the people's faith in a leader. He gives people land. He creates more and more stability for people to kind of trust their communities. All right, so the first way he does this is through military strength and expansion. So he uses force to double the size of his empire. Oh, bless me. He uses force to double the size of his empire. So if you look here, here's 600 AD. And then as you see, the empire starts to expand here in the blue. And by the time that he's sort of at the end of his rule, or when his sons rule, the empire is pretty much all of Western Europe. So he closely manages the empire. So he puts what's called a count in charge of smaller areas and had agents watch counts. It looks a lot like a local system of government almost. Now, I don't want to call it government, but I think you can compare it in the fact that Charlemagne, who was on top, trusted a lot of people beneath him to run his empire. And so the reason they're called counts is because they are in charge of the area. And the word county, so like Pierce County, actually comes from counts. So they were given a plot of land that they were supposed to watch, and they were supposed to take care of it. They were supposed to collect taxes and food and things like that from the people that worked on the land. It's starting to set up kind of the system that we see here in America with counties and people working together and kind of living in the same area, and local governments. And then again, having spies that would report back if anyone was being dishonest or disobedient and kind of cheating the system. And he encourages education. And this is a big move, because we talked about Europe is falling backwards. Europe's moving the wrong way. Education is something that can change that. We can move forward with education. He believed that. So he learns to read or write, which is actually pretty rare for a king. You're born rich, you can stay rich, you don't have to worry about it. But he learns to read and write. He thinks this stuff is valuable. He opens up a school, a palace school. Again, establishing a place for learning. And then monasteries to create school. A monastery is in Christianity, it's where monks live. It's a religious center. Religious center. So he encourages these monasteries, to open up schools to educate. And now we're not just talking reading, writing, or math. We're talking also educating on religion. So this does help the spread of the Christian ideas and help spread the empire. So now I want you to sit and take time and think, what is the benefits of an educated population? Why is this something that we want? So now he does something that we actually don't want to see in America, according to our founding fathers, is he joins the church and the government together. He uses the church to expand his empire, and now he's bringing government along with it. So he requires that people in his kingdom are Christian. When the Catholic Church sees this, they see it as an opportunity. So they also are on board with this, and they really heavily support Charlemagne. They want to give him anything he needs so he can run this kingdom, because he needs people to be Christian where he lives. And then also another thing with Charlemagne is he gives people a choice. So when they're going on conquests, to take more land, he gives you a choice. You can either be Christian and live with me, or we can kill you. So the people that refuse to convert face death. Again, really rigid with their Christianity here in his kingdom. Eventually, after pushing this Christian nation and the support of the Catholic Church, he's crowned the Holy Roman Emperor by Pope Leo III. Now he's a ruler of God. He's the Holy Roman Emperor. So he makes himself appear chosen by, it might be kind of obvious here. So was this surprised or was this planned? Another thing to think of too, was this Charlemagne's idea from the get-go? Is this what he wanted it to be like? Did he see that he had an opportunity to get support and to become all-powerful? Or did this catch him off guard? And it's really something to think about, because if this is planned, this is actually pretty smart. He finds the support of a really, really powerful church. He builds an empire. He's crowned the emperor. If this is by surprise, that's pretty lucky of him. I'll put it that way. So after Charlemagne, Charlemagne was a powerful guy. He commanded people. People loved him because, again, he unites the kingdoms. So people absolutely love him. His sons weren't the same as him. So he had 3 sons, which were Charles the Bald, Louis the German, and then I believe Pepin the Short is the 3rd one. And here are their different kingdoms that they ruled. So between them, there was a civil war, and because the empire becomes weak and kind of falls apart without Charlemagne, and it's hard to keep track of what's going on. And all of a sudden, the threats from the invaders that were there before, becomes a new threat that's going to come from the north. So the empire weakens, and as a result, the Holy Roman Empire splits into 3. So now we're seeing some severing and some fracturing of what Charlemagne had built. Eventually, with all this fracturing, they signed the Treaty of Verdun. So the Treaty of Verdun was something that these kingdoms realized we need to unite together. And by signing this treaty, they ensure that there is some sort of unity, but yet they have sort of their own kingdoms, so that they're not torn apart per se by outside invasions. But we're going to see that that's going to still become an issue here, moving on to the next unit. Okay, so that's the end of that. Just a short batch of notes. So let's take a look and see what you should have here. That's the wrong note packet. Pay no attention to that. Pretend that's not real. And here we go. So you should have some of the impacts here. What goes on with the Franks? You have the 4 kind of important things to Charlemagne with this question to answer. And then, again, make sure you watch the video that's going to be linked in the instructions. And then any additional information, okay? Any additional information that you can find. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, make sure you email me, Mr. Elling, or Mr. Foley. I'll see you for the next lecture. Have a good night.